Okay, YouTube says we are live for another Tech Talks. I'm at home with a sick kid, so I am not in person with Nick and Melanie. But that's okay because Nick's gonna mostly be running the show today. So Nick, take it away.
Yeah, we'll see how I do. So today, what we're going to be talking about is annotated assignments in Canvas. So this is where we're building an opportunity for students or an activity for students to interact with some sort of document, image, and basically provide their insights directly on that material. So for example, writing in the margins of a Word doc or creating little markers for important items on a painting, for example. Like there's a lot of different things we can do with it because it's got so many options. I'll give you some examples today so you can see what it looks like. Then we'll go through actually how you make these. It's really simple, which is awesome. Canvas makes it pretty easy. And then we'll kind of do one more example and then hopefully have a little bit of time to kind of discuss, but it should be quick, succinct, all those good things, fingers crossed. So what I'm going to start with is actually what this looks like. So we all kind of have a frame of reference. Now, some people might do this outside of Canvas, then something like Jamboard or some sort of ed tech tool like that. But what I like is that it's all contained in one space here in Canvas. So for example, what I'm going to do is I'm going to jump in as Sketch. Let's do this. And I'll show you what an assignment like this looks like on the student end. So let's imagine this image annotation assignment is what we're doing. When a student clicks into an annotation assignment, it immediately will open up what Canvas calls the doc viewer, which is the same thing in SpeedGrader where you're looking at a document that a student uploaded. It's the same tool, but what we're doing is we're allowing students to interact in a different way. What we have up here is a quick toolbar. Over in the top left, a student can download the material that they're working on. So say they're having an issue, they can download it and then annotate it through some other third party. They can zoom in, zoom out, expand the window, enter full screen if they need to. And then here's the actual tools that we give them access to for their submission. So first is a selection tool, which won't be needed until we start creating annotations. So for example, I've got this, let's do this. I'm gonna just zoom out a little bit. So we try and get a little bit of a fuller picture here. But here is, for example, an image. I think this actually might even be a PDF that has been uploaded. You've given the student some context around it. Hey, I want you to identify these structures. So we've got some little basically blocks that have been created on the image that a student can essentially insert text in, or for example, we can use what they call point annotation, and I can highlight certain things like, oh, there's the alcaneus. And when a student does that and clicks out, it saves it, and then when they submit it, you'll see that on your end. Additionally, if you're dealing with like a Word document, they can highlight text. They can also do free text annotation. So for example, right here, student might write in, it says tibia. Here's the A-list. And if, assuming that the assignment was insert or identify all the structures in the right boxes, fib, la. There we go. We can come back, click out of it, it'll save it, go back to the selection tool. Students can move it around, they can change colors, they can give things backgrounds. There's actually quite a bit they can do in here. Going through the tools even further, they have the ability to strike out text. So it's a Word doc and you've got students doing maybe a review of something you've given them as like an example. Hey, review this for grammar, review this for content, strike out things that might not fit. They have that ability. You can grade them on that. They can also free draw if they wanted to. So here, I would circle that. I can put a comment on it. I could have also just only circled that, and that would have been the annotation, but I could say, hey, this is first meta-versal. And then the last thing would be an area annotation. So then I can, let's see, what else would, here's an example. I can also create a box that I use for kind of that same purpose. Sorry. well, no, I'll leave it, and that'll be how I'm spelling. Anyway, so let's assume the student's gone through everything they needed to. They did all their annotations. They submit the assignment. It's all done. So essentially, the student has just had to access the assignment, do the annotations as you've probably outlined. You'll have the content or the context for the assignment will be right above that annotation. They submit it. You'll see it then SpeedGrader. And then when it gets to SpeedGrader, it's kind of that same view you will basically have accessed previously. Or I should say, it's the same tools that students have. You can annotate back. You can provide replies to what the students have said. If you hit enter, it'll send it to them. You can basically do all those annotations on your end, and you actually have access to this anytime a student submits a PDF, a Word doc, an image. You should have access to these tools as well. So it kind of goes both ways. But in this case, what we're doing is we're building the opportunity for students to have access to these tools and submit it to you. Again, it's not the only way they could potentially do that, but it kind of adds a little bit of flexibility on your end, makes it a little bit easier to grade, and you're not having to download materials and then review the annotations. So that's what it looks like. Those are the tools that both you and the student have for basically having communications both ways. Let's actually talk about how you build these. And that's the beauty of it, is it's super cool. Oh, yeah.
Before you do that, there's a couple of questions in the chat.
Yes.
First of all, this is not the same as some of the new question types and new quizzes. This is a different thing that goes through the normal assignment tool, the same tool that you would use for students to submit a Word document or something like that. And then the second question from Jennifer, could you have multiple pages in one assignment?
Yes. And it'll just be like they're scrolling through a Word document, for example, that can go down. The restriction there is that it can't be more than 100 megabytes, which is quite a bit. So if it's really image heavy, you should have enough room to kind of work there. Just remember, it's going to be harder to load on the student's end. And that's where adding another basically opportunity for submission is going to be important. I can't open it up because my internet isn't great. I'm going to need to be able to download, which you can always have they have the ability to download it over in the top left. But if that's not loading, you probably want that in the context somewhere in the assignment itself. But let's take a quick look at how to actually build these, because like Caleb just said, this is its own standalone thing. So this would be, you've got an assignment that you used to have students download and interact with and then send back to you. You can all do it in one spot. Essentially, what you're going to do is you're going to jump into assignments, build your assignment as you normally do, give it a name, put some context in, and then when you get to submission type, I think by default it'll be something like no submission. What you're going to do is you're going to select online, and then you can see there's the student annotation option. And then from here, this is where you actually upload the file that you're going to want the students to interact with. It can be a PDF, it can be an image like a JPEG or a PNG. It can be a Word doc. Word doc seems to work kind of like the best, but one of the great things about this is it's going to accept any Apple file types. Those will get converted and be accessible in the doc viewer as well. So it's going to do a lot of things on that end, but as long as it's text or image, it's going to work, at least from what I can tell. And then
I noticed, Nick, that it has a little notation right on it saying, consider selecting multiple submission types to accommodate students who may not be able to create annotations, which is what you mentioned earlier. It's nice that students have the option to download the document. Maybe they are really struggling technology-wise, but they could download a document, print it, and hand annotate it, and then submit that in some way. So it's nice to give them more than one option of how to submit this work.
Exactly. And that's not only because the student might be having technical issues, but they may be non-sighted. They might be having issues actually interacting with the mouse. There are some instances where something like a marker annotation isn't going to work for them. So that's where you would potentially just offer the opportunity to allow a file upload. And usually I would keep this pretty open, or I just have it set in my assignment instructions. Hey, if you don't feel like you'd be able to do this, or you have internet issues, why don't you just send me a message and I can create an alternate for you, or you can submit it in an alternative format. And I'll kind of coordinate that with you. So you can always keep it really flexible, and that's kind of makes it easy for everybody. But most people, it seems, have been able to do this pretty well. It also works on a phone, which is awesome. So they have the same view on a phone. Some of the tools are just in different spots, but they have the full functionality. So theoretically, if somebody doesn't have a computer, they'll still be able to do it on their phone, which is also a nice feature. So then once you've got basically this set up, which this is my standard. I have the file upload, student annotation. Let's assume that I've uploaded a file. I then would come down, set all my other elements, and then click save. And then there we go. It's all populated the way I need it to. And I don't have to actually do anything other than send it up to the students, make sure it's published, and then start receiving essentially their assignments. So what I want to do is show a little bit of a more fully fleshed version of this to kind of help give you a visual, because that was kind of very simple. There was no instructions. So let's take a look at this example I built. This is for, like, imagine like a lab safety assessment. You know, students have done something to kind of prepare for lab. Hey, it's our first week. You should probably know how to act in the lab. Here are the things you need to consider. What does safety look like in this space? So I created this assignment called I Need Your Help. And essentially it starts with, hi class, I recently designed a lab for you all as your introduction to blood typing. But when I ran it by the rest of the bio department, they all shunned me and said mean things about the lab, like dangerous. And is this a joke? I feel like I might be missing something. Would you mind taking a look to figure out why the rest of the department wants me fired? Thanks, Dr. Vlad. Hi, Taylor. You know, Halloween. Anyway, so this is the kind of like our purpose statement. This is what's going to get students drawn in. And then here's their task. So read through the example lab procedure and highlight the areas within that don't align with our lab safety standards. For each example of unsafe lab practices, provide what should be done instead, as well as quick rationale. One thing that this doesn't have is an example, which would be helpful for an annotation assignment because they are non-standard. You don't see them a lot as a student. So because it's something that just depends on the instructor, would be nice to see, right? Oh, this is what they're talking about when they talk about annotation. That's not common vernacular for a student just starting out here at the community colleges or just in general. We know what annotation is, but the student might not. And then I've just got this little bit of information, this context I provided. It's got some links to the doc viewer article that kind of describes all the tools. I also have an opportunity for them to download the example lab if they want to edit it outside of Canvas. So again, that's allowing multiple ways for it to get to you, because at the end of the day, you just want it to be annotated, right? It doesn't have to be Canvas. Canvas just is making it a little bit easier for those that can access it. And then just some quick grading information. So let's take a look at what this looks like on the student's end. And just remember that this has the same setup as what we were just talking about. All we've got is online, student annotation. It's just got a Word doc attached and then a file upload. So those are the only things you actually have to set up for the students to be able to interact with it in an annotation fashion. So let's jump back in as Sketch. It'll be our little, could use Caleb, but he's not doing very well in class, so I don't want to adjust this stuff. Here we go. Back as user. Here we go. I'm throwing my Zoom window all over the place. There we go. Now let's jump into that lab orientation. So again, once a student jumps in, it actually sometimes will take them a whole way to the student annotation because it opens by default. But what I'll do is I'll scroll up, match on student, I'm reading through, boom, 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 boom. And then here's that document. And actually has 2 pages, just like you were asked a little bit earlier. But now a student can theoretically start going through and finding little issues as I've kind of laid it out. Oh, I've got to find issues with the procedure, with lab safety issues that I find in here. So, okay, so budding scientists, I'll ask you to gather your own blood. Oh, that's a little peculiar. I've never seen that in a lab before. It's important that you source from a human. Oh, that's good to know. Mason jars or other lidded containers. Okay, that's, I guess I'll be doing that to prepare for the lab. Please refrigerate. That seems like good lab safety. You want to refrigerate blood. So I don't know. You know, I'm a new student. I don't know how to prepare this, but preparing for lab, make sure to wear comfortable shoes since we'll be on our feet at first. Okay, that makes sense. Tend to wear sandals and baggy sweaters. Oh, wait a second. I remember in our lab orientation that we probably want to wear closed-toed shoes and things that aren't baggy because they could get caught in equipment. Okay, you know what I'm probably going to do? I'm just going to highlight this and say, wow, that's probably not great. Nope. Then let's see what else I've got in here. You know, I might go a little bit further. maybe oh, whoops, might bring a snack. That's probably not okay. You don't want food in the lab, but we'll move past that. Donation. What's he talking about? Students are paid to what? Depending on need, we may be collecting additional samples. Donation will be based on chapter 1 quiz scores. Whoa, that's a little sketchy. But a student would be going through, oh wait, we probably shouldn't be tasting chemicals in lab. Probably not how we should test chemicals. There are other senses we probably could use, or just maybe my instructor should label the chemicals we're using a little bit better. But then, students can go through and maybe they want to kind of like do this way. Let's do, go for use all. Sometimes I need to take my goggles off. That's a no-go. You can imagine students would go through this and hopefully get what you need out of it. Once they're done, they're going to submit the assignment. And then on the other end, let's take a look at what it looks like in SpeedGrader. You can go user, there we go, SpeedGrader. And now as the instructor, I can kind of see where those annotations are. And it's pretty quick. So there's very little load time in between students submitting and you receiving. Kind of one of the things that I see the most is like on the student's end, it takes a little bit to load depending on their internet accessibility or just how fast their internet is. But then I can say, as the instructor, that's your opinion. But anyway, I can respond to everything that they've done. I can add new annotations if I want. Oh, you probably should have mentioned, this is probably a little bit concerning, bringing food into the lab. You can provide that feedback as well. So it can be kind of this back and forth. And just like any assignment, you can ask for resubmission. They'll get a new version or basically be able to add additional annotations. And then you can, again, keep that back and forth going, hopefully getting students exactly where you want them to be or to get what they need to be to essentially move on to the next assessment or activity unit, XYZ. So that's what I really like about this whole process is it's integrated with SpeedGrader. You can provide that feedback and students, when they jump into essentially their assignment again, they'll see that they've got these annotations, and that can be kind of a nice way to manage that feedback. One of the things to consider also is sometimes these annotations, like if you annotate directly on the assignment, if I remember correctly, don't show up in standard notifications. This assignment comment does. So usually what I'll do at the end of this is, hey, I added some annotations, and then I give them some quick instructions on, hey, how to access that. And then that would show up in their email if they've got their notifications set correctly, or when they look at the gradebook next, they'll see there's a little comment there. But either way, it's kind of a nice way to do that. So
Nick,
with that,
could we see what your annotations as an instructor look like to this point? We had that question in the chat about how do students access this feedback and what does that look like?
Yeah, let's do that. That's a great question. So imagine we've gone through that. Ooh, let's grade it first. Let's assume it's complete. So then it's good. Let's jump back out. Let's see. I think I can get it. Okay. So as Sketch the student, if I go through grades, and then if I look here, there's that comment. You'll notice that, oh, I've got some annotations. If I remember correctly, if I click into that link, it'll take me to the assignment. Again, I still don't have anything in here, but if I go one further to submission details, that's where I'm going to see the instructor annotations. And I think I only added one reply, so you're not seeing a bunch pop up here. But this is where, for example, you would see that. So they can go through the gradebook that way. Or if they just go to the assignment directly, you can say, hey, take a look at the assignment, or you can send them a link to the assignment. It'll take them there, check out the submission details. You'll see all of my feedback that I gave you. Then they click on that, then they can see it again. If they resubmit it, I believe it should be, just a fresh document. So they won't see those old annotations. So if you are asking for that resubmission, be very clear about, oh, I already got your annotations on these things. I don't need them again, or I would prefer for you to go through the process one more time, make sure it's really solid, provide annotations for all the things now, including the ones you missed, and then you can resubmit. So that would be another part of that process that you just want to make sure open line of communication with the student. But either way,
can students still see that comment feedback after the assignment deadline has closed? That was a follow-up question there in the chat.
Yes, they'll always see that even after the assignment's closed, because that's just like all standard feedback. It's going to be attached to the assignment, but it'll never basically disappear, if that's helpful. I think that answers the question.
I think Jennifer is shaking her head like you've had a alternative experience with that.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, let me know, Jennifer.
Like right now?
Yeah.
Okay. I just have experienced in the past, like, yes, I use the assignment submission comments often, and students can pick those up and read them, but any of the in SpeedGrader annotated, you can also leave feedback in quiz responses, but if the assessment submission or active window is closed, they can no longer access, at least from my perspective, they've not been able to access those comments, those feedback comments, unless I reopen the active window.
Is that specific to quizzes?
Well, yeah, so there are some, I have some assignments where there are windows, like I'll have a short answer question in one of my assignments, and I'll be able to provide feedback underneath their response rather than just the general all assignment feedback. But students won't be able to really see that specifically if the assessment window is closed.
I believe that's specific to quizzes, though,
Okay.
depending on whether you're allowing them to see their answers after the fact. We'll do a double check here.
Okay.
Totally eat my words. If I'm wrong, then Jennifer, you can get a gold star and I'll send it to your office.
Well, I mean, and we can look at that later. That's secondary to what you're trying to do right now.
Well, it's important though. So I've closed the assignment. And so now that the assignment's closed, the student should still be able to see those annotations because it's an assignment type and not a quiz type. Quizzes have those weird little extra, not weird, but they have those extra settings where you can close it down. So they can't see their answers. And if they can't see their answers, they'll also not be able to see your replies to those or your comment and feedback to that. So this doesn't have that same restriction, but that's really important, especially if you're going to be asking them to do something in quizzes. Were there any other questions, Caleb? I want to make sure we've got 2 more minutes that get you all out of here at a good time. I want to make sure I haven't created more.
I think we covered everything that was asked in the chat. But Nick, you briefly mentioned something earlier that I think is noteworthy. You said something about Apple iWork documents being viewable assignments now.
Yep, that's important to know. So while that's helpful here, right? Students can now submit Apple iWork stuff. So the things that we've always had issues where it's like a student sent me something, I've got a Microsoft computer, I can't access it. It's a weird version of PowerPoint that's specific to Apple, or a weird image type that's specific to Apple. What Canvas has done is they now have it so that any Apple file types submitted here, or I guess you wouldn't really get it this way because you'd be controlling that, but they submit it to you and you're accessing it because SpeedGrader and you want to use these tools, you'll have access to that now. So essentially what they did was any pages, numbers, and key file types are now previewable in Doc Viewer. I believe this also includes .heic image files.
That's good. I used to work on that a lot.
Because that's a super rough one, but I have not tested that one out personally. So just keep that in mind. That needs to be tested specifically on our team. But I believe
but we see pages files as a problem all the time, where a student has an iBook, a MacBook, and they do their work in Apple Pages, and then they submit it. And previously, you were just out of luck if you were on a Windows computer and a student did that. But now, as of fall 2023, not a problem. It's completely viewable and previewable and speed gradable. And there's nothing you have to do to turn that on. It's just available to everybody now. So I think that's a really great thing to mention.
And just building off that, why that's important here is now you can also provide that file upload in any format. It doesn't really matter. So, hey, we've got our annotated assignment, which in the past we used to kind of control that variable, right? Oh, I'll just give you a Word doc in the doc viewer. I know it's going to work for you and me. Perfect, easy peasy. But now because of this, oh, I can just say file upload. If you have an alternate format you want to use, feel free to use it. And then we should be good to go. So it's kind of nice to get that flexibility now. Yeah, you can download it.
Just removes one extra little barrier that we already had for students.
So thank you for reminding us, Caleb. That would have been, it's kind of the reason why we were doing this. Oh yeah, we've got these new things happening. So with that, are there any last questions? I want to make sure we get you out of here at a good time. All right, with no questions.
I'll just mention that, Nick, I really love the assignment design that you used here.
Oh, thank you. I thought that was kind of
just because, like, in my mind, like, one of the things that I love is assignments that do more than one thing, right? So in this case, you're doing several things at once. You're reinforcing lab safety for a lab class, which is something that students sometimes struggle with, especially freshmen. And then not just having them do like a multiple choice quiz or something, but actually telling them, no, I want you to tell me what's wrong and what the right lab safety action is. And I just really like that.
Yeah, I thought it was fun. It's more fun to design stuff like that. It's more fun to read it afterwards. So with that, I threw in the chat our eval for our Tech Talks. Please give us your feedback. We always love to hear it. It helps us kind of determine exactly what you all want to hear, so that you're not just listening to us to ramble about the things we like, which we love doing, but you might not love, which is okay. So feel free to reach out to us also via email if you've got other things you want to tell us or questions you have about this. We always love hearing from you. Always love supporting you however we can. So with that, what was I going to say? Go forth and prosper. Was that what? Sure, that's how we'll end it. Go forth and prosper. It's good seeing you all. Have a good one.
Thanks, everyone. Thanks, Nick.
Thanks, Nick.
Like a canned